Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be with Chris Naugle from Flip Out Academy. Chris, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
It is our pleasure. Let's go back in time a little bit. How did you get started? You've had an interesting career path.
I sure have. Started just a young kid. I had a dream of being a pro snowboarder. That was what I wanted to do, and I ended up doing that. In the same time as I was trying to pursue that goal, it didn't really fit that I had a job, and I had some terrible jobs up to that point. So started my first clothing line, and that was in Mom's basement. It was called Fat Clothing Company, where I sold my clothes, in the backpack at school to all my friends. That led into the idea that I needed my own physical location. You had mentioned the mall. Well, my original location started in 1994 in the Lockport Mall, and that store was Fat Man Board Shops, skateboard, snowboard shops. And that's when, I look at that period of time, and that's probably the absolute greatest period of time in my life, because I was fulfilling my dream to just the nth degree. Now, that all ended in the early 2000s when the dot-com recession happened. It actually started when the planes hit the towers on 9/11. I'll never forget, I was driving to my brand new store that we just opened up, and I had heard about the first plane, then the second plane. We all remember that. And what I didn't know is what followed, because that was the first recession as an entrepreneur I ever went through, and it literally brought me to my knees. So I needed to get a job. For the first time from when I was 16, I was literally in need of a job and a paycheck. So I put my resume out, and back then during the recession, the only people that were hiring, or only people that would hire me, I should say, was Wall Street. So that landed me in the Wall Street world. I spent 16 years there as a high-level financial advisor, and I would have probably never left that world if it were not for my wife and I getting a show offer on HGTV for Risky Builders, which aired in 2018, which is exactly when I retired from the financial advisory world, left that world, went on to pursue the TV show. It didn't pan out into season 2, but that was the greatest thing, because that door closed and another door opened, which walked me into what I do today, which is teaching people how to take control of their money and how to be their own bank through the infinite banking concepts. And that is the primary business I do, although I have 18 businesses all done and told, but that's where I'm at today.
And I'm sure the longer version is in one of your books somewhere.
It is.
Awesome. So we'll tell people later where they can go to get those. You transitioned from a $500 loan in your mom's basement to an 18 or more portfolio company. That's quite impressive.
It's been a lot of times, past. I'm going to be 48 next. Actually, end of this week, I'll be 48. Gosh, time flies.
Well, happy almost birthday. What mindset shifts propelled you during those time periods?
All right, so this is a huge thing, because it's all mindset, and I think you're well aware of that. I've known you for a long time. We're in the same town, actually. And back then, the biggest mindset was, when I was an entrepreneur, I worked in the business. Now, when this whole recession hit and I realized I needed to get a job, and I put a suit on, and I went to an office every day, I was forced. I didn't happily do this, but I was forced to not work in the business, but to work on it. That was the single greatest mindset shift. At first, I fought it. And, just like so many things, when change comes into your life, you push back and you don't want change. But that change was the greatest thing. Because as I started working on the business, I put other people that were in my organization in control. I appointed them as managers and directors, and they ran the business better than I could. They actually had ideas that I never would have thought of. And that allowed me to kind of look from a 30,000-foot view down on the business, change my mindset around what my role was, and work on marketing efforts and building skateboard, snowboard teams. And that was back when I was probably in my late teens, early 20s. Now, mindset has played a major role in everything I've done. I've gone from having money to losing it all, to having money again, to losing it all, to then realizing the difference from a mindset standpoint of being rich versus being wealthy. And the biggest difference is the mindset, or just the act of not giving money back. And that involves you taking more time, slowing things down, and really just focusing on, why am I making the move? What problem is it solving? And whose problem can I solve? And that's every business I have today was focused on one single solitary thing. What problem for someone else does this solve, and how big of a problem is it? The bigger the problem, the more money you can make. And as of recently, and Seth, this, you deal with a lot of high net worth individuals. The biggest consensus I've come to realize is that money has a diminishing return. When I was young, money was everything. You wanted it because you wanted the things, the house, the car, all those things that you dream of when you're a child. But then as you start accumulating money and you building wealth and you start having these things, and then you get to a point where you're at a surplus, and I'm not bragging, folks. I want you to understand this. I'm simply stating what every one of you will realize. You will realize that money isn't the reason you're chasing all these things. Money's not the reason you're working. It's something much bigger than money and wealth. Wealth is just the tool you use to get to those things, but eventually it flips. And this has recently happened to me, in the last couple of years, where now my major things I work for are charitable things. Working to fund my foundation, to do charitable giving, to help other folks in different passions that we have with animals. And that's been a major shift. And, Will Rogers nailed it. And he said something I want to preface. He said, the biggest problem in America is not what people don't know. He said, the biggest problem in America is what people think that they know that just ain't so. When you talk about mindset, that has been my life's mindset shift. Is going from what I thought I knew to what I really needed to know and what I needed to focus on.
That is so spot on. What inspired you? First of all, for our folks watching or listening, what are the Flip Out Academy? What's the Money School? And what inspired you to start both of them?
Sure. Well, Flip Out Academy is a company I ran back a while ago. We did real estate education. We don't operate that anymore. It just holds trademarks now. It's just a holding company. But today, my main companies are Money School BYOB, where we teach people a very simple concept that's been around for hundreds of years, which allows them to take back control of their money, allows them to take back the banking functions in their life by allowing someone, by changing one thing and adding one step, to become their own bank. Essentially, think of it this way. Everything in your life that you finance today, you write a check to somebody else's bank for it, principal and interest checks. Imagine writing that check every month to yourself, to your bank, and keeping all the interest, but all the while you're keeping the interest, you earn uninterrupted compounding interest. And compound interest is a crazy thing. I study Earl Nightingale. I listen to all his stuff, and he talks about it all the time. And Albert Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world and the most powerful thing in the world. So that's really what I do. I harness something that's been around forever that the wealthy have always known about as they called it privatized banking, and now I teach it to the masses, and I do that for thousands of people. The other company I operate is a very simple one that came out of, remember earlier I said that mindset shift of what problem can I solve for someone else. When I had all the real estate during COVID, when it hit, I sold all my real estate. We just here in New York, it was almost impossible to hold real estate. The state essentially said your tenants don't have to pay rent, so I didn't want to do it anymore. I was so burned out on real estate that I sold it all. Then all of a sudden I had this big chunk of money, and I remembered something, Seth, that a mentor had told me. He said, the ultimate in real estate is being the bank. I never understood it. But at this moment, I had the capital, and I wanted to be the bank. I wanted to be the lender. So I thought, all right, well, I need to find one place where I can go and I can look at deals, I can talk to borrowers, and I just want this to be simple because I don't have a lot of time. That didn't exist. So I started thinking, wait a second. to lend money, to be a lender, you got to like go to all these other places. You got to spend, it's almost a full-time job just finding the deals that you're going to lend money on. I'm like, this is backwards. There needs to be a dating site of sorts for money. So what I did is on a piece of paper, so simple, and everything starts on a napkin. I drew a circle and I said, in the world, there's two types of people. People with money, okay, on one side, and they have a problem, and that problem is they want to make more money. On the other side are people that need money. That person I used to be when I needed money for real estate deals, and they need money to make more. Why isn't there a dating site of sorts, a dating site like site that brings people with money together with people that need money and each other solve one another's problems? Well, it didn't exist. I drew it on a napkin. I got this crazy idea. I'm going to create this community. I'm going to create the first dating site for money. And I did. And it's called Private Money Club. We're over 9,000 members now, and it's flourishing. It's been challenging from a regulatory and just SEC law, but we figured it all out. And that's mostly what I do. BYOB, which is Be Your Own Bank, and Private Money Club. The two fit together just perfectly.
Awesome. I totally get the synergy. And we've talked about the infinite banking concept on
Absolutely.
the show before. We believe in it. What are the biggest misconceptions people have about how money works, and how do you help them shift their perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, people a lot of times make money, they're everything. And I think the biggest problem with money is people don't understand that money has to work for you. But here's the misconception. We've only been taught through society and through all of our upbringing from grade school straight through college to work for money. You are always taught that you trade an hour for the dollar. And that only gets you so far. But when you start realizing that you have a limited amount of time, and when you really get to the consensus of like, what am I really doing all this for? You're doing it to buy back your freedom, your time. That's it. That's what we're all working for. Well, if you're trying to buy back your time, then you simply can't trade hours for dollars because you have a limited amount of hours, and we want to spend them in meaningful purposes like spending time with our family, going on vacations, doing things that really make us, who we are. So that's the misconception. You can't trade hours for dollars and do that to wealth. You have to learn that you eventually have to shift, and you have to then have your money work for you, because money doesn't have restrictions. It doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't need to go on vacation. It doesn't go to the bathroom. It can work for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, buying back your time, allowing you to go out and fulfill what your greater purpose is. And that's the biggest misconception I've found. And then there's the 6 laws of wealth, which I'll feed into that, but we are just taught backwards how money works.
Amen to that. You are the visionary CEO of your companies. How do you stay grounded while setting big goals for your team?
Grounded, I take my shoes off and I go stand in the grass. It's called grounding. Just kidding. How do I stay grounded? I wouldn't say I'm always grounded. What I've done is I've realized I'm not smart. And I kind of mean that jokingly, but I'm not smart in all the areas that I need for my businesses to operate. So being the visionary and being the creator of all these different things, I've realized that I'm a great visionary, but visionaries are terrible implementers. Okay, I cannot take my ideas and implement them and make them go to work. So I've had to surround myself with an executive team and just a staff of people that believe in the vision, that have, that buy into the culture, but then have the skills that I do not possess to go out there and implement what my ideas are. So that is single-handedly the way I've done this, and the way I've stayed grounded, is realizing that my team is the single most important thing for my operations. Without them, none of it exists.
You've achieved so much success in various different ventures, and most importantly for the clients of those ventures. Well, what's your biggest challenge now?
The biggest challenge is back to that Will Rogers thing. The problem isn't what people don't know. It's what they think they know that just ain't so. I didn't say that just to say that. I said that because that's my biggest challenge. With what I do, it's so simple. It's so logical. But yet we live in a world that is not based on logic. We live in a world right now that is heavily driven by emotion. So everything that I teach is logical. But when you've got people that are emotional and they listen to everybody else tell them, it's kind of like, through life. Let me go back to one more thing, and this will sum up what we're trying to say here. And this is an Earl Nightingale thing. He says, what is the difference between success and failure? And through all of his studies and all of his research, he found that the difference is creation. Those who create have success. But then what's the other side? Because he calls it the 595. 5% of the folks out there will have success. The only reason they see success is because of creation. And he said the other 95, they conform. They conform to what everybody else tells them to do, what everybody else's failed dreams are, their failed realities. That's what most people listen to. So my biggest challenge is I'm up against 95% of the folks out there that are conforming to what other people tell them, and other people are bought into the traditional way of money working, which is contradictory to what I do. So that always is my biggest problem, my biggest barrier, because I know I can help everybody, but I've had to come to grips with it and realize that I'm only looking for the 5%. The 5% that are the creators, that are looking for change, that want meaningful impact in their life, and that are not willing to let other people determine their future and then conform to that.
You mentioned earlier the foundation and I believe animals. Can you talk about the foundation and the causes that you're passionate about right now?
Yeah. So, my wife really kind of drove this. We wanted to do more giving, and we were giving to individual things, but we wanted to make more impact. So we found out that, there's an advantage to us, and that's a tax deduction. So we created Naugle Foundation, which is a private foundation, a 501c3, to which each year our CPA advises us how much money we put into that foundation, and we get a tax deduction. So that's in it for us, right? But then what we do is we then go out and we find causes that we like. My wife's really into saving, stray cats and stray animals. So we give probably hundreds of thousands a year to these different shelters that are out there doing the God's work, doing the good work, and saving the animals that can't save themselves. And my big thing is child trafficking. I have a 5-year-old daughter. So I'm obviously, like most of you listening to this, fully against that, and I want to make a move and make an impact in it. So we've devoted a large chunk of each year's donations to our foundation to that. And the last big thing that's a big push, and my daughter goes to a private school. So I went to public schools, my daughter goes to private. So I've seen the differences. Private schools can do more things than a public school can, and I want to bring financial education to private schools, and then hopefully it'll go from there, because you're not going to have any real impact in public schools, but private schools you can. So I've started this process by doing a TEDx talk. Okay, it was called Rethink Money, a letter to my daughter, a physical letter I wrote to my daughter, 6 laws of wealth told in parables. Then from there, I went on and I wrote a children's book with my partner, Hannah Kessler. And then I've done a ton of trainings teaching parents and children alike how money really works, and doing it through very simple lessons, simple furry little critters. And that is definitely my impact. When you think about life, you have to leave a legacy. Now, a legacy isn't the cars, it's not the house, it's the mark you leave on the world that you're remembered by. Otherwise, your name dies 1 generation later. Nobody remembers you, but people will remember the impact you left. So if I can make a mark in any one of those, that's my main burning desire right now.
It's beautiful. Well, we know your time is incredibly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some with us. For our folks who are watching and listening, where is the best place for them to go to learn about the Private Money Club, to learn about Money Multiplier, to learn about BYOB? And man, I want to read the letter to the daughter and the parables and the kids' book. Sign me up for all of it.
Well, it's easy. You could just go to chrisnaugle.com. It's Naugle, and everything's on there. The TEDx talk is on there. The books are all on there. You can get them all for free. And also, my YouTube channel is my #1 source. So it's at the Chris Naugle, all my social following. So if you want to follow me, go to YouTube, subscribe, and all that stuff is on there.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been Seth Greene with Chris Naugle. Chris, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We'll talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.